November 1942 settled heavily over Ironbottom Sound, cloaking the restless waves with a darkness stained by dozens of shattered, Allied hulls everywhere. Each swell carried metallic echoes of earlier battles, reminding every sailor that this cursed water held memories carved by fire and steel. American crews advanced cautiously through the gloom, trusting only their instruments because no moonlight revealed the silhouettes stalking beyond their range tonight. Ironbottom Sound breathed an eerie stillness, concealing wrecks resting silently beneath the waves where countless sailors had vanished during earlier clashes below. Gun crews whispered steadying prayers, gripping cold steel mounts while awaiting orders that would decide whether their ship joined the graveyard below. Every lookout scanned the invisible horizon, feeling the oppressive weight of night pressing against senses already strained by weeks of relentless combat. Admiral Willis Lee studied the radar display carefully, trusting the electronic pulses that pierced darkness more dependably than any human eye could. His battleship moved deliberately across the black water, driven by a crew disciplined enough to ignore fear while navigating unseen dangers ahead. Japanese forces believed night favored their superior training, not realizing American electronics now transformed darkness into a battlefield where they stood exposed. The sea murmured with distant engines, carrying faint vibrations that hinted at enemy formations sliding cautiously through corridors formed by earlier wrecks. Clouds smothered any remaining starlight, creating a canvas of utter blackness that forced commanders to interpret only what their machines revealed. Tonight, every compartment hummed with suppressed tension, echoing with footsteps measured carefully to avoid disrupting the fragile rhythm sustaining wartime focus for now. Veterans recognized the atmosphere immediately, sensing how the approaching engagement would determine control of waters stained by months of brutal losses. Ironbottom Sound demanded respect from every sailor, reminding them constantly that misjudgment here meant vanishing beneath unforgiving depths without warning tonight. American destroyers maneuvered carefully around submerged debris, using precise charts updated frequently to avoid hazards created by numerous previous engagements nearby. Above the uneasy waters hovered thick humidity, carrying the scent of oil lingering persistently from wrecks still leaking beneath the surface. Each officer reviewed contingency plans carefully, understanding the unpredictable nature of nighttime battles where unseen threats often dictated survival outcomes grimly. Washington advanced deeper into the contested channel, maintaining perfect discipline as gun crews awaited confirmation of targets emerging through electronic interpretation. Silence spread across the decks deliberately, broken only by distant machinery vibrating steadily beneath sailors preparing mentally for the looming confrontation. Expectations mounted intensely among the crew, building a collective awareness that tonight's clash would redefine their understanding of technological naval warfare. Darkness ruled Ironbottom Sound completely, leaving every sailor dependent on machinery guiding them toward an unseen enemy tonight. Admiral Willis Lee entered the Pacific with a reputation shaped by precision, carrying the calm confidence of an Olympian who had mastered the science of marksmanship long before he commanded battleships beneath the stars. Every officer who served beneath him understood that his medals from the 1920 Antwerp Games were not symbols of athletic triumph alone, but clear indications of a mind obsessed with accuracy, control, and the disciplined application of technology even when chaos ruled the battlefield around him. His belief in mathematics shaped every decision, framing combat not as a contest of instinct, but as an equation defined by range, trajectory, and timing, which he trusted far more than dramatic searchlights cutting through the night. Lee viewed night engagements with a mathematician's patience, understanding that traditional naval doctrine relied heavily on visual acquisition, which often favored the Japanese whose night optics and training once dominated the Pacific theater. He saw radar not as an experimental accessory but as a decisive weapon, believing its pulses offered truth unmarred by fear, smoke, or illusion, allowing American gunners to engage enemies long before human eyes detected incoming threats. This trust separated him from other commanders who hesitated to place battleship survival on the reliability of electronic signatures, especially in waters where darkness concealed dangers with merciless efficiency. His command style blended quiet authority with relentless preparation, reminding crews that every drill mattered because electronic warfare demanded precision exceeding anything practiced during daylight operations. Lee encouraged his sailors to treat radar screens with the same seriousness they applied to gun mounts, insisting that mastery of information determined survival long before heavy shells erupted from the turrets towering above them. He believed battles were won by those who understood their tools completely. And radar operators under his command carried immense responsibility because their interpretations shaped the timing of every maneuver, salvo, and course correction. The Admiral's faith in technology came not from blind optimism but from extensive study. As he consumed engineering reports, technical manuals, and developmental notes with the same intensity he once applied to analyzing Olympic shooting patterns. His expertise convinced him that SG radar, with its revolutionary plan position indicator display, would redefine naval warfare by offering spatial understanding impossible through traditional lookout posts that struggled in mist, smoke, and moonless dark. This conviction prepared him uniquely for Ironbottom Sound, where he intended to invert the Japanese night advantage using instruments capable of revealing entire enemy movements long before visual confirmation occurred. Lee walked the decks of USS Washington with deliberate composure, steadying the crew simply through presence. Because sailors recognized that he did not gamble but calculated, trusting electronics because they eliminated uncertainty that had doomed so many Allied ships earlier in the campaign. His leadership remained calm even when tension thickened across compartments, allowing his officers to follow radar directives without hesitation because they believed implicitly in the Admiral who demanded nothing less than flawless discipline under the shroud of Pacific darkness. SG radar emerged as the most advanced surface search instrument of its era, allowing American crews to pierce night conditions that once granted Japanese forces absolute dominance, and transforming the fundamentals of naval detection in the Pacific. Its microwave frequency beam cut through rain, smoke, and wave clutter with unprecedented precision, enabling operators to track enemy warships even when visibility fell to zero. Through disciplined training and constant refinement, sailors developed confidence in a machine that rendered darkness irrelevant, giving Washington's crew a new strategic advantage. The core of SG radar rested in its magnetron-powered transmitter, which produced short pulses that rebounded from steel hulls, allowing range and bearing to be calculated with unmatched clarity and revolutionizing American situational awareness. What made this system extraordinary was its ability to distinguish individual vessels within tight formations, providing data far more accurate than earlier C or CXAM sets. For the first time, commanders received real-time information they could trust, enabling tactical decisions formed not by guesswork but by electronic certainty. At the heart of SG capability stood the plan position indicator display, a glowing circular screen that converted returning echoes into intuitive visual plots and allowed operators to see surrounding waters as if illuminated by invisible light. This sweeping line traced enemy movements in smooth rotations, giving watchstanders a spatial map once unimaginable in surface combat. Officers could coordinate maneuvers rapidly because the system displayed friend and foe with equal clarity, ensuring the fleet never moved blindly, even when the night remained completely opaque. SG radar offered extraordinary range resolution, allowing American ships to detect enemy forces at distances beyond 8 miles, and doing so without revealing their own presence through searchlights or gun flashes. This passive strength altered the psychology of night combat, shifting initiative toward those who observed first and acted decisively. Radar operators learned to interpret faint echoes, understanding how sea state, ship profile, and angle affected each return. Their increasing mastery produced confidence that transformed Washington into a hunter moving silently through hostile waters. The system's mechanical stabilization ensured accuracy even while the ship rolled, allowing radar beams to maintain alignment across turbulent seas and preventing false readings that once plagued early war equipment. Engineers designed SG units to endure shock from heavy gunfire, ensuring continuous operation during intense engagements. This rugged reliability meant crews no longer feared equipment breakdowns at the moment of crisis. Every sailor understood that as long as the display spun cleanly, Washington possessed eyes sharper than any lookout standing watch above. Training for SG radar demanded meticulous discipline, requiring operators to memorize signal patterns, understand interference, and distinguish genuine contacts from atmospheric clutter, all while maintaining composure under pressure. Radar schools taught sailors to treat every echo as a potential threat, reinforcing habits that eventually defined American night warfare. As proficiency grew, crews developed instinctive responses to enemy movements, allowing battleships to maneuver with confidence. Through repetition and precision, operators forged a partnership with technology that allowed Washington to fight flawlessly in complete darkness. The Japanese Navy, long dominant in nocturnal operations, lacked an equivalent radar system, forcing lookouts to rely on visual detection that failed utterly against electronically guided opponents, and granting Washington the crucial element of surprise. Japanese officers quickly realized they were being tracked by an unseen enemy, noting salvo patterns that appeared impossibly accurate for night conditions. Their confusion reflected the widening technological divide, one that worsened with every engagement. As SG-equipped ships entered the Pacific, American fleets gradually reversed disadvantages that once seemed insurmountable. SG radar integrated seamlessly with Washington's fire control systems, enabling rapid calculation of range, bearing, and closure speed, and providing gunnery teams with precise coordinates long before optical directors could react. This coordination allowed broadsides to be fired at near-perfect targeting solutions, creating salvos that landed with devastating consistency. Radar-fed firing data eliminated guesswork entirely, making Washington's accuracy at night equal to her daylight capability. When combined with disciplined gunnery crews, the system transformed her into a lethal instrument of controlled, scientific destruction. The psychological effect of SG radar extended beyond tactical capability, influencing the morale of American sailors who understood they finally possessed a reliable tool against the once feared Japanese night attacks. Confidence replaced uncertainty as crews realized they could detect torpedo boats, cruisers, and battleships long before danger materialized visually. This newfound assurance strengthened resolve across the fleet, allowing officers to approach night engagements not with dread, but with calculated determination. Through SG mastery, Washington's crew embraced a role once unimaginable in early Pacific battles. As SG radar matured, it became the cornerstone of American naval doctrine, rewriting principles of night combat and allowing battleships to dominate waters previously ruled by stealth-oriented adversaries. Washington's success at Guadalcanal demonstrated exactly how transformative this technology had become, revealing the immense strategic value of electronic detection. By merging radar intelligence with disciplined seamanship, the U.S. Navy pioneered a new era where darkness ceased to offer concealment. Through this system, American battleships reclaimed initiative and shaped the future of surface warfare. The Imperial Japanese Navy entered the Pacific War with unmatched night-fighting skill, relying on superbly trained lookouts and elite destroyer crews who could strike without warning, yet this mastery depended entirely on human perception. Their long-range Type 93 torpedoes gave them confidence, allowing attacks launched from beyond visual range. But the system collapsed instantly when radar let American ships detect movements invisible to the human eye. Once darkness no longer protected them, their greatest strength began turning into a liability. Japanese destroyer divisions trained relentlessly in low-light conditions, using silent approach techniques perfected across decades of exercises, and trusting lookouts whose eyesight became legendary within naval circles. These sailors identified silhouettes at distances Americans considered impossible, granting Japan early tactical advantages. However, their dependence on visual detection created a dangerous vulnerability, because once SG radar entered combat, Japanese officers found themselves advancing blind into firing arcs they could neither see nor anticipate. The very environment they once dominated betrayed them. Japan's night strategy relied on coordinated torpedo attacks, with destroyers sweeping forward before cruisers followed, yet radar undermined this entire sequence. American ships tracked movements the moment formations advanced, letting commanders time their maneuvers with precision. Torpedo salvos that once devastated Allied fleets at Savo Island now faced opponents who turned away seconds after detection, nullifying attacks before they reached effective range. Japanese commanders sensed their advantage slipping away but had no technological means to restore initiative. Lookouts had always been Japan's shield, enabling early contact reports that shaped battle outcomes, but radar outperformed even the sharpest human eyes. The faint silhouettes once spotted through binoculars now appeared as clear electronic echoes, removing any element of surprise. Japanese officers soon realized their doctrine was collapsing because perfect training could not overcome machines that never blinked. With each engagement, the gap widened, revealing how vulnerable their visually dependent system had become. The Japanese fire control process also suffered, relying on optical directors that required visible targets to estimate range and bearing. Yet radar allowed Americans to generate firing solutions instantly. By the time Japanese gunners identified splashes from incoming salvos, their ships were already bracketed. Darkness, once an impenetrable shield, now amplified their helplessness. Optical crews struggled to match electronic accuracy, and their frustration grew as shells landed from directions they thought impossible. Japanese cruiser captains found themselves confronting opponents who maneuvered with uncanny foresight, reacting to movements that had not yet been visually detected, and forcing Japanese forces into defensive patterns they had never rehearsed. Radar let American ships maintain distance or close rapidly, disrupting carefully planned torpedo runs. Maneuvering advantage, once Japanese, shifted permanently toward the technologically superior fleet, leaving experienced officers bewildered by American anticipation. Even elite destroyer flotillas felt the shift, because radar identified small, fast targets just as effectively. Their high-speed nighttime approaches became predictable traces on American screens, and evasive zigzags failed to shake radar locks. Crews accustomed to slipping undetected through darkness found themselves illuminated by invisible beams, and psychological strain grew with every encounter. Each failed approach chipped away at the confidence that had defined Japan's naval identity. The Japanese Navy attempted countermeasures, including reducing searchlight use and tightening formation discipline, but none compensated for technological disparity. Without radar, they relied on intuition shaped by years of training, yet intuition faltered against electronic precision. Battles once dictated by Japanese timing now unfolded on American terms, and every maneuver revealed how outdated their equipment had become. Their attempts to adapt proved too slow for the rapidly evolving battlefield. The morale impact proved severe, because Japanese crews understood they were confronting an unseen opponent. Reports described frustration as ships came under fire before anyone sighted an enemy, creating fear unfamiliar to veterans of earlier victories. Psychological superiority shifted dramatically toward Americans, whose confidence increased every time radar exposed approaching threats. Japanese officers recognized the shift but lacked resources to reverse it. By late 1942, Japan faced an enemy who turned darkness into a weapon, negating decades of specialized training. Night superiority had been the cornerstone of Japanese surface doctrine, yet radar shattered that foundation completely. With every engagement, the battlefield tilted further against them, proving that courage and skill could not replace electronic vision. The masters of night suddenly stood powerless in an environment they once controlled entirely. The disaster at Savo Island unfolded with brutal speed, shocking Allied commanders who watched 4 cruisers fall within 30 minutes, exposing catastrophic weaknesses. Darkness favored Japanese forces completely, allowing their destroyers to launch devastating torpedo spreads undetected. The sudden collapse forced a painful realization, demanding immediate technological change. American crews learned how vulnerable they were without reliable night detection, because human lookouts failed repeatedly under chaotic conditions. The Japanese skill in low-light combat overwhelmed every defensive attempt, revealing dangerous gaps in Allied doctrine. Savo Island proved that courage alone could not compensate for flawed systems. The defeat created urgent pressure within the U.S. Navy, pushing leaders to reconsider long-standing assumptions about night operations. Traditional searchlights and binoculars offered little protection, leaving entire task forces blind beneath moonless skies. Technology, rather than seamanship, became the only viable answer to future threats. Engineers accelerated radar development after the battle, treating the Savo failure as a turning point demanding revolutionary tools. The SG surface search system, previously experimental, gained top priority in production lines. Naval leaders insisted new radars reach frontline ships immediately, preventing another catastrophic ambush. Training programs transformed rapidly, emphasizing radar interpretation over visual spotting because Savo Island showed how easily optical methods collapsed. Radar operators received expanded authority, guiding maneuver decisions previously controlled by bridge lookouts. Their screens became lifelines during night engagements, shaping tactical responses. Commanders adopted new doctrine focused on radar-informed scouting, creating layered detection networks across task forces. Ships relied on electronic coordination to maintain situational awareness, replacing outdated formations vulnerable to surprise attacks. This shift redefined naval thinking, enabling controlled responses within darkness. Savo Island also changed gunnery procedures, encouraging reliance on radar rangefinding rather than visual estimates. Fire control teams learned to trust electronic data even during heavy smoke or confusing illumination. Gun crews experienced fewer delays, striking targets sooner and with greater precision. Intelligence officers recognized that Japanese night superiority depended on Allied blindness, making radar the critical equalizer. Reports highlighted enemy confidence during darkness, urging rapid deployment of technological counters. These insights shaped procurement decisions, directing resources towards sophisticated detection platforms. The psychological impact remained severe, motivating American sailors to master new equipment with urgency. Savo Island became a constant reminder of vulnerability, encouraging disciplined radar usage during every nighttime patrol. Crews understood survival required perfect familiarity with their instruments. Ultimately, Savo Island forced the U.S. Navy into rapid modernization, transforming radar from a promising invention into a decisive warfighting tool. The tragedy reshaped strategic priorities, ensuring American ships would never again enter darkness blind. This transformation laid the foundation for future victories across the Pacific. USS Washington advanced through Ironbottom Sound with deliberate precision, using SG radar to track distant contacts unseen by human lookouts, allowing Admiral Willis Lee to navigate confidently. The moonless night hid every horizon, yet the radar display revealed enemy positions clearly, guiding each silent movement through dangerous waters. The battleship maintained blackout conditions, keeping every porthole sealed and every light extinguished, ensuring complete concealment against Japanese optical detection. Radar operators monitored faint echoes, providing continuous updates that shaped Lee's course corrections. Washington moved confidently, trusting electronic vision where no human eye could function effectively. American sailors felt tension rising as they closed within 8 miles of Kirishima, knowing visual contact remained impossible. Radar plots marked enemy bearings precisely, granting Washington remarkable awareness despite total darkness. This unseen tracking allowed Lee to prepare firing solutions early, enabling swift engagement once orders were given. Washington's approach demonstrated disciplined teamwork across multiple compartments, integrating radar readings with gunnery calculations seamlessly. Fire control crews translated electronic data into accurate trajectories, trusting instruments perfected through relentless drills. Their coordination formed the backbone of Washington's nighttime capability, turning darkness into an operational advantage. The battleship maneuvered carefully to avoid friendly vessels, since the chaotic environment contained numerous damaged ships drifting unpredictably. Radar provided essential clarity, identifying both allies and potential threats within cluttered waters. This situational awareness ensured Washington maintained safe separation while positioning for decisive engagement. Engine rooms sustained quiet efficiency, delivering consistent speed essential for tactical maneuvering while maintaining minimal visible exhaust. Engineers understood radar-enabled stealth-like movement, giving Washington freedom to reposition without revealing herself. This mechanical discipline supported Lee's broader plan, enabling approach without detection. Above decks, turret crews waited in silence, relying entirely on radar-fed firing solutions. Without moonlight, they could not see targets directly, yet trusted their instruments completely. Their readiness ensured rapid response once Kirishima entered effective range, demonstrating confidence in Washington's advanced technology. As distance closed, radar contacts sharpened, revealing precise enemy movement patterns. Plotting teams recognized Japanese vessels attempting coordinated maneuvers, yet Washington held positional superiority through early detection. Lee used this information to angle the battleship optimally, preparing for concentrated broadside fire. Japanese forces remained unaware of Washington's exact location, relying solely on visual observation hampered by thick darkness. Their inability to detect approaching threats created tactical paralysis, allowing Washington to advance unchallenged. This advantage showcased the transformative power of radar-based navigation during night combat. By the time Washington reached engagement distance, radar had delivered every detail necessary for overwhelming firepower. The battleship approached silently, calculating angles and ranges with mathematical precision. Darkness once favored Japan, yet this night belonged entirely to Washington, guided by electrons instead of moonlight. A cold Pacific night settled across the waters as the American task group advanced, moving with deliberate caution while operators studied their glowing screens. The air remained silent, except for the rhythmic pulse of machinery, creating a tense atmosphere as sailors prepared for a historic moment that none fully understood was approaching. Amid the darkness, the battleship's radar suite swept methodically across the sea, tracing electronic arcs invisible to every human eye. Crewmen trusted these signals completely, knowing they offered the single advantage capable of turning uncertainty into sudden clarity against an enemy renowned for stealth. Far ahead, the returning echoes sharpened into distinct forms, revealing shapes no lookout had yet identified. The operators reported precise bearings with calm discipline, sending information directly to the plotting rooms where officers calculated firing solutions with unprecedented confidence. The ship's gunners adjusted their turrets according to the radar-derived coordinates, trusting mathematics over instinct as they prepared for an engagement without visual contact. Every adjustment strengthened their belief that technology, not eyesight, would decide the opening blow in this looming confrontation. As the range tightened further, the task force continued advancing steadily, unaware that history's first radar-directed naval gunfire was moments from initiation. The ocean around them remained deceptively peaceful, masking the unseen drama unfolding within electronic circuits deep inside the battleship. Officers issued final confirmations based entirely on radar data, marking a revolutionary departure from traditional naval doctrine. This reliance on electronic detection created an eerie atmosphere, because none on deck could see the enemy whose destruction they were about to unleash with remarkable precision. The order to open fire cut cleanly through the night, triggering an eruption of thunder as heavy guns launched shells along invisible trajectories. The salvos rode through darkness guided solely by calculated coordinates, representing a radical shift from centuries of visually aimed battles. Moments later, distant flashes appeared on the horizon, confirming that the radar solutions had been flawlessly accurate. The enemy vessels suffered direct hits before understanding it had been detected, proving electronic warfare could overcome even the strongest mastery of night operations. Lookouts finally spotted the burning target long after radar had already secured the advantage, demonstrating how decisively technology had reshaped the engagement. Their astonishment reflected a broader realization spreading across the fleet, signaling a permanent transformation in naval combat doctrine. The success of this unprecedented strike marked the dawn of a new era, showing commanders that electronic detection could eclipse human senses entirely. From that night onward, radar would dominate tactical thinking, ensuring no opponent relying on darkness alone would ever reclaim superiority. The Japanese bridge fell into confusion as Kirishima's lookouts scanned the black horizon, unable to locate the source of the sudden incoming fire. Officers shouted conflicting bearings while the ship shuddered violently, leaving the crew desperate to understand how an unseen opponent had achieved perfect accuracy. Explosions tore through compartments as shell impacts arrived without warning, forcing commanders to rely on instinct rather than reliable information. They struggled to identify any silhouette in the darkness, realizing with growing dread that the enemy battleship remained completely hidden from conventional observation methods. Damage control teams rushed across smoke-filled decks while officers attempted to steady their nerves, issuing orders based on incomplete assumptions. Each new impact deepened their confusion, reinforcing the sense that they were dueling a phantom capable of attacking without offering any visual clue. The gunnery crews attempted return fire using estimated bearings, firing salvos toward vague flashes that offered little certainty. Their frustration mounted as they recognized the futility of traditional night fighting techniques against an adversary operating beyond the reach of ordinary detection. Bridge officers exchanged urgent calculations, but the changing situation prevented any coherent strategy from forming. They could not comprehend how the Americans tracked them so flawlessly, leaving them convinced that some unknown advantage rendered their finely honed night skills useless. Shocks reverberated through the hull as vital systems failed, creating additional chaos for engineers fighting to maintain propulsion. Each new failure reduced maneuverability, allowing the invisible attacker to dominate the engagement, while Kirishima's officers attempted to salvage control. The realization spread among senior staff that they were outmatched by an unseen force observing their every move. Their training emphasized superior night vision, yet none of their strengths mattered against an enemy striking from total concealment with relentless precision. Fire control stations attempted one final coordinated salvo, hoping luck might reveal the attacker's position. Instead, additional hits silenced key turrets, proving the Americans had maintained exact targeting while offering nothing for the Japanese to visually engage. As flames rose across the deck, officers understood the battle's outcome had been decided long before first contact. They faced not merely another battleship, but a technological leap that negated their most trusted tactics and left them blind within their own domain. The bridge filled with smoke as abandoned ship preparations unfolded, marking the end of Kirishima's desperate struggle. Her officers confronted the devastating truth that mastery of darkness no longer guaranteed survival, because an unseen enemy guided by electronics had rewritten the nature of naval warfare. American success at Ironbottom Sound spread rapidly through fleet reports, convincing commanders that radar-equipped ships gained decisive advantages during night encounters. Senior officers recognized this shift immediately, urging accelerated installations to prevent further losses. Within weeks, maintenance crews worked tirelessly to fit SG sets onto every available combat vessel. The dramatic contrast between traditional night fighting doctrine and Washington's performance forced strategic planners to reassess long-standing assumptions. Japanese forces previously dominated darkness, yet radar allowed Americans to negate those skills. This realization pushed the Pacific Fleet toward widespread technological standardization, ensuring every task force gained similar detection capabilities. Carrier groups adopted radar screens as operational norms, enabling early warning teams to track incoming threats beyond visual range. Pilots relied increasingly on ground-controlled interception, reducing surprise attacks that previously devastated unprepared formations. The combination of sea-based and airborne radar created layered defensive networks across expanding operational theaters. Destroyer squadrons benefited significantly, using radar to detect enemy torpedo formations before closing distances. Their commanders used these advantages to launch preemptive engagements, disrupting Japanese night tactics once considered unstoppable. Radar-backed scouting altered established roles, turning lightly armored ships into critical sensors for larger surface groups. Cruisers gained renewed importance by integrating radar-directed gunnery, which allowed precise fire across vast distances. Their operations became increasingly offensive, as confidence in detection systems encouraged aggressive maneuvers. Radar made coordinated bombardments more reliable, granting commanders the ability to maintain pressure on retreating enemy forces. Japanese naval planners observed troubling patterns as American radar coverage expanded, requiring urgent countermeasures. Their attempts to develop effective detection technologies lagged behind, leaving fleets vulnerable during critical moments. Losses accumulated, forcing tactical adjustments that prioritize caution over previous offensive momentum, weakening overall operational flexibility. Allied commanders used radar networks to synchronize distant task groups during multi-axis operations. These advantages supported long campaign arcs, allowing coordinated strikes across wide oceanic fronts. Improved communication and detection fostered operational cohesion, diminishing opportunities for Japanese forces to isolate and overwhelm individual units. Transport convoys traveling through contested waters benefited immensely from radar-guided escorts. Early detection of submarines and surface raiders reduced losses during critical supply routes, enabling sustained offensives. Radar-equipped escorts identified threats with unprecedented reliability, transforming perilous nighttime operations into manageable logistical undertakings. As radar installations multiplied, training programs expanded to produce specialists capable of operating increasingly complex equipment. This new expertise strengthened every fleet element, elevating technical proficiency across ranks. Radar operation became essential to modern naval warfare, shaping doctrine and reinforcing a culture emphasizing scientific advancement. By early 1943, radar dominance reshaped the Pacific balance of power, granting Allied forces consistent situational awareness. The technology's rapid spread ensured that no battle unfolded under old assumptions, establishing a decisive shift that favored precision, coordination, and informed command decisions throughout the evolving conflict. The operators manning SG radar stations became unsung heroes, translating faint electronic echoes into actionable intelligence while remaining unseen themselves. Their concentration under pressure ensured every pulse returned usable data, allowing gunnery crews to strike with precision previously unimaginable during total darkness, and transforming the nature of naval engagement entirely. Radar screens glowed continuously, forming the invisible eyes of the fleet, giving commanders real-time awareness that eliminated reliance on human observation. These displays became the focal point of every bridge, as officers learned to interpret subtle variations in echoes, detecting enemy movements before traditional lookouts could even register the threat visually. Crew members trained relentlessly, developing instincts attuned to the screen's feedback, recognizing patterns and differentiating false signals from genuine contacts. Their skill allowed them to anticipate maneuvers, giving ships a decisive advantage during night combat, and demonstrating that technology alone was insufficient without disciplined operators interpreting it correctly. The success of radar-based operations reshaped American night fighting doctrine, emphasizing coordination between electronic detection and gunnery control. Commanders instructed crews to trust instruments entirely, integrating readings into tactical decisions, while traditional reliance on visual spotting diminished in importance, marking a fundamental shift in naval operational philosophy. Operators endured long hours in confined spaces, remaining alert despite the monotony punctuated by sudden bursts of activity. Each contact demanded immediate interpretation, and errors could prove catastrophic. Their endurance and concentration became as critical to success as the ship's armament, defining a new class of frontline naval responsibility. The psychological impact extended to enemy forces, who realized their visual mastery was insufficient. Japanese sailors accustomed to dominating darkness found themselves vulnerable, encountering salvos fired accurately from unseen opponents, eroding confidence and forcing strategic reevaluations across the Imperial Navy. Radar redefined the power balance entirely. Night engagements became scientific exercises, with ranges, speeds, and bearings calculated electronically in real time. Ships no longer relied on intuition or guesswork, and operators' interpretations directly determined firing solutions. The union of human skill and technology elevated naval combat into a controlled, predictable domain where surprise was minimized and effectiveness maximized. The spread of radar technology across the Pacific accelerated, equipping carriers, cruisers, and destroyers with the same advantage Washington possessed. Every fleet element now contributed to an interconnected electronic network, enabling early warning and coordinated engagement, solidifying American dominance in night surface combat, and establishing a strategic precedent for future conflicts. Radar's legacy persisted beyond the war, influencing post-war doctrines and shaping modern naval operations. Every operator trained during World War II contributed to a body of knowledge that would inform electronic warfare, target acquisition, and night engagement strategies for decades, proving that mastery of detection could redefine maritime supremacy permanently. The dawn of total night dominance represented a convergence of human skill, technological innovation, and tactical doctrine. Operators, screens, and electronic warfare principles combined to create an era where darkness no longer concealed threats, and naval engagements became battles of information as much as firepower, forever changing the rules of war at sea.